Okay, we're interpreting William Shakespeare here. This is The Merchant of Venice. We're going to do over here the characters in the play. You can always download the play from Folgers, like the coffee, Fogler apostrophe S. So let's be real careful about why some of these things are brought up. And I want you to look at, I'm just going to go up to the very beginning of we're in Act 1, Scene 2. And I want you to look at how these two, Portia and Nerissa, how they do parodies. And all of these guys, these are merchants, how they all talk to each other. And how, if you notice, they all have like, they're all from Venice. They all have like Italian endings. And then you have Shylock, and for some reason they do tell his ethnicity. And they get into this, and they get into like this because there's been some talk that Shakespeare, with this play in particular, by using Shylock, was actually maligning Jewish bankers back from the 14th century. So be careful how you look at what they do and how you say and how you interpret it. And then some people say, well, he was traveling and that's what happened. But this term, Shylock, became kind of like a slur. So be careful with this. Anyway, here's how they start. This is not the very beginning of The Merchant of Venice. It's just the part where Salarino says, misfortune to my ventures out of my doubt would make me sad. My wind cooling my broth would blow me to an ague when I thought, what harm a wind too great might do at sea. I should not see the sandy hourglass run, but I should think of shallows and of flats, and see my wealthy Andrew docked in sand, veiling her high top lower than her ribs to kiss her burial. Okay, so here, there's this constant like burial meaning end, like they make these allusions to, and when I say they, Shakespeare made allusions to, and like he's talking about a friend, but yet he's also talking about a ship, and he's using words like shallow and flats, and he's talking about I'm upset, there's an ill wind and this, and then he's talking about thought to this shell. I have thought to think on this, and shall I lack the thought? That made me sad. And then he says, would scatter all her spices on the stream, and robe the roaring waters with my silks, and in a word, but even now worth this, and now worth nothing. So he's thinking about throwing everything into the water. And once again, with Shakespeare's allusions, a lot of people tend to think, okay, not bethink me straight of dangerous rocks. Okay, that this allusion is somewhat close to like that nasty little word we talk about. And I'm going to go ahead and write it here, and then I'm going to erase it. Okay, because I don't want anybody to get any kind of thoughts like this. But it makes kind of like an allusion to this, to like he's thinking of jumping over the bridge. So be careful, but now he's really upset, and you know what's going on. Okay, then you come over to comic relief and illusion. But this is a couple of lines down. You have Gratiano will keep me company but 2 years more. Thou shalt not know the sound of thine own tongue. Okay, and so Gratiano is actually saying something back to Lorenzo. He's saying, go ahead, keep me company 2 years more. You won't know the sound of your own tongue. And he kind of says, you won't know who you are. You keep hanging around me, because Lorenzo kind of said, this guy always comes around and says something that's rude, or turns around and says something the opposite of what he said before. So these are like comic relief that, he's kind of saying something, but at the same time, it comes out arrogant. It's said very arrogantly. So I want you to look for these things. And then you have parody in a dramedy, or a dramatic comedy, as they call it. And Shakespeare, for a long time, this is just a plain comedy. Okay, Portia's comments to Narissa are really funny throughout, and the way they wordplay and talk back is something. I don't know if your teachers want you to use words like this, like dramedy, but that's a portmanteau because you took the word drama, part of it, and you added it in with comedy. And so you had drama plus comedy, and that's what they are. And you know, just if you want to get into something, if your teacher wants you to explain the mechanisms used, you know, and how Shakespeare uses them, if you're doing a comparison between two papers, there's other things. And a lot of people will use another portmanteau like frenemy and say, he's my friend and then he's my enemy. He's like both. But these words are not really so standard. So, like, you know, you have to be careful how you're going to use them in literature. Okay. And so they have comic lines, comic reliefs here. So let's take a look at one. So, like, Nerissa kind of says, how like you, the young German, the Duke of Saxony's nephew? And he says, very vilely in the morning when he is sober, and most vilely in the afternoon when he was drunk. So she doesn't really like him. She uses the word vile, and vile means she can't stand him. Okay, and explains that he's drunk most of the time. And even though he's wealthy, he's a drunk. And over here we're looking at this, and she says, yes, but if he should offer to choose and choose the right casket, you should refuse to perform your father's will if you should refuse to accept him. This is called a parody because the words are talking about themselves. Portia's father is dead. She's a princess left with this money, and this term here that she's using, it's like when you think about it, you'll go, wait, what's she talking about? She's talking about like they're going to talk that he's got to choose the father's casket or coffin and this. And then Portia comes out, I pray thee set a deep glass of Rhenish wine on the contrary casket, for if the devil be within and that temptation without, I know he will choose it. So now you've got this illusion with this word casket. It's an illusion to wine because sometimes, you know, they used to call these wine glasses casks. And back a long time ago, a casket could have also been something that carried like a wine glass, like you and I probably today call it a flask. Okay, but there's this allusion to this, and you have to look at how these words are actually used before you go out and just, you know, say, well, you know, they're talking about death. Like, try to look at how these words are played upon, how they're used, and what they mean. So when I go on the next slide, and you say if you drink wine, you don't want to go here, but if you drink wine, it leads to death, and then the person's in a casket. But look at how she's in words like he drinks too much. Choose the right casket for him, you know, and at the same time he'll be there because he's over drinking. So they're kind of making fun and saying, well, we could choose a casket because he's drunk. You know, we know he stays drunk most of the time. Only time he's sober is in the morning. So Shakespeare uses these types of illusions, and also casket in this case could actually be a metaphor. Okay, and look at how they are so they tell the comedy, because otherwise reading Shakespeare can be complicated. That's the end. There we are, Jacobit's Learning at Gmail. We'll do the next slide, next set tomorrow.